Good morning, beautiful people. I should put my keys in my pocket. How are you all? I know, no one's in here. So I'm always talking to myself for like a good, probably like 2 minutes before. So, anyway, hello. Hello. All right. Ooh, we have a lot on here. I have a lot on here this morning. Whew. What do I want to start with? Because there's just so much. I prepared so excessively for today's live morning news show. I'm thinking I should start with this. So, good morning, everyone. How are you all? Today, my goal is to really I'm just going to give you the information. There's a lot out there. There's a lot to talk about. And my goal is to just break it all down for you. And I'm not going to get bogged down in a lot of the comments of what people say. So if you don't like the fact that I don't read out comments, then too bad. This is not the show for you. Good morning. Oh, my mod squad. Mod squad is in here. Kate, good morning. Glad you're feeling a little bit better. Ellie, love you. Happy to see you here. Cherie, Cat Mommy, hello. Oh my goodness, Cat Mommy, how's it going? I'm glad that you're over here. Look at that. I know. I'm wondering if I should just try and do a TikTok live just for the heck of it, but I'm just seeing so much more here on YouTube that like TikTok is just it's so downhill. It's so bad. Anyway, let's get into it this morning. I love all of you. I'm happy to see you all here. Good morning. Shout out to my amazing mods, Cherie, Ellie, Kate, everyone else that's jumping in here. I just missed you too much. Aw, well, I'm glad that you're here. So, this was brought to my attention by some of my friends. You know who you are. Yesterday. But I also was just looking into it, and this whole situation is just crazy. And it's so disgusting. Like, just imagine the US government releases the private addresses of people that just, like, the federal government literally knowingly or unknowingly just releasing the private addresses of citizens that are at the center of any sort of big government story. Like, that's just so insensitive or just cruel. Like, it's just cruel. So, if you've been following the whole situation with Kilmar Abrego Garcia, this is the guy who was wrongfully kidnapped, wrongfully deported. He had some legal protections to be here as a non-citizen. There is no evidence linking him to MS-13. There's none whatsoever. And if there is, then great. Please bring it. Government, share with us this evidence that you have. But they won't share any evidence because they don't have any. And the government is known to lie about trying to deport these people, as we see in the case of Jose Hermosillo, which we have a big update on that case today. But I saw this and I wanted to start out here. Kilmar Abrego Garcia's family flees to safe house after the Trump Department of Homeland Security posts their home address on social media. Now, it's hard to know whether this was intentional or if this was unintentional. Regardless of the intentions, that the impact is there. If you accidentally knock a beautiful glass vase off of a counter and it shatters into a million pieces, doesn't matter necessarily if you intended to do it or if you accidentally did it. The damage is done. The thing is broken. You have to atone for it. You're not just going to say, well, I didn't mean to, so I'm not going to clean it up. No. So it's hard to know whether the government did this on purpose or whether this was unintentional, but regardless, the damage has been done. So they had to flee to a safe house. Now, let me just go a little bit further into the story here. The Trump administration just doxed an American citizen, endangering her and her children. This is completely unacceptably and flat out wrong. And the Trump administration's not only sent Kilmar Abrego Garcia to a Salvadorian mega prison due to an administrative error, and so far has refused to comply with the U.S. Supreme Court to facilitate his return, but also on social media, but also shared on social media the home address of his family in Maryland, forcing them to relocate. Now, as a quick little recap, there's no evidence that ties Kilmar Abrego Garcia to MS-13. There's none. That's been put in court. There's nothing. For all the Trump administration officials that are saying, oh, there's so much evidence, you didn't bring it in court. You didn't bring it in court. There is no court documents that show any of this. There's nothing there. If there is, then great, please share it. This is your moment. Have it. But there is none. There is none. And in fact, it's quite the opposite, because Trump's attorney, a guy named John Sauer, he's the Solicitor General, when petitioning the Supreme Court of the United States, admitted in his own brief that the United States concedes the removal to El Salvador was an administrative error. Literally, again, in the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, you see in here, he admits it to being an administrative error. This is not any sort of woke document. This is the Solicitor General of the United States admitting to it being an administrative error. Period. End of story. The evidence is right here. Boo-hoo if you don't like it. That's your burden to bear. That's your bridge to cross. Whatever. Evidence is right there. And in this brief, there was no evidence tying him to MS-13. Period. So, I thought in this country we believed in the idea of innocent until proven guilty. Unless you're maybe a brown guy. Is that what the Trump administration is ruling? Innocent until proven guilty unless you are, a brown guy. See, I thought that Republicans criticized Democrats about when they were doing racial profiling, which was bad in New York City during stop and frisk. And that was their, tough on crime, really, really bad. I thought Republicans actually critique that. Oh, but when they do it, it's totally fine. Especially if it means not just, locking people up, but actually deporting them to a concentration camp. Yeah. So, yeah, don't come at me with whatever, oh my God, you're such a hypocrite. No, you just don't have a consistent ideology and flip sides. So, no. Anyway, so the Trump administration has not only sent Kilmar Abrego Garcia to this Salvadorian mega prison, but also, due to an administrative error, which we just proved, but also, they refused to comply with the U.S. Supreme Court to facilitate and effectuate his return. But now the Department of Homeland Security literally released the home address of his family. And I'll show you right here. And this is what the Department of Homeland Security released. I am not going to zoom in on the address, but it is in this document that is still up, by the way. And this document here, this is an interesting little thing to the story here. Now, there was a domestic dispute that happened with Kilmar Abrego Garcia and I believe his wife. And there were no charges filed, but there was a case that was opened up before the court. And at one point, his wife, I don't remember her name, wanted to bring this lawsuit. So this was obviously a domestic dispute. There was some sort of conflict. Well, what was really interesting is that actually she never ended up showing up in court. So when looking further into the case here, it ended up being dismissed because the petitioner, who is the wife that was claiming to have been mistreated, which if you were, then great, please seek justice, petitioner failed to appear. So thereby, there were no charges that were filed. Now, all of these MAGA people are like, oh yeah, let's deport these people. He's obviously done awful things to women. I thought you wanted to believe women. So you want to deport folks who are mean to women? Okay, let's start with our president. If you're going to have an ideology like that you want to just, without having any due process, If I can go through and just accuse someone of doing something bad, then you can deport them. But see, here's the thing. This document that they released, what's interesting is they didn't prove that he's a part of MS-13. What they're trying to do is shift the story, shift the narrative, trying to be like, oh, he's a bad guy. Look, again, I thought we all believed in this country that you're innocent until proven guilty. It's that way for everyone. Yes, including Donald Trump, of course. If you accuse him of doing something bad, which there are many accusations and evidence to show, then you have to have your day in court and bring about that evidence. That's how our legal system works. There is a presumption of innocent until proven guilty, not just extended to citizens, but extended to all persons within the jurisdiction of the country and their borders. That's how it works. Go and check the Constitution if you have a beef with that. Go and talk to the founders, dig up their graves. Don't do that. But I'm just simply pointing out that the Constitution is written to protect the rights of all people, citizen or not. And if we start to erode the due process rights of people, then where's it going to stop? It might start with someone who might be undocumented, have some legal protections to be here, not as a citizen himself. But if we ignore the due process of one person, when you are inevitably accused of something that you didn't do and you want to prove that you didn't do it in court, well, you got rid of the due process rights for the other people. So you literally are shooting yourself in the foot because you're eroding the whole idea of due process. Unless you truly think that you're better than other people because you view yourself as better. And then, of course, you get angry about why people call you a supremacist. Just pointing it all out there. And by the way, just a quick little thing. If there are people that are in here trying to be obnoxious, drama seek in the comments, I'm not even seeing it. I literally have the chat hidden. My moderators are amazing and they maintain the space. So just as a heads up, you will be muted and blocked if you, one, spew misinformation, objectively wrong information. So literally just made up facts or just absolute lies. YouTube has policies around misinformation. Or if you use your First Amendment rights to spew hate and bigotry and anger and harassment, then sorry, yes, you can say it, but you're not going to be free from the consequences of your free speech. If I yell fire in a crowded theater and there is no fire and it's a prank and it leads to people being trampled, injured, maybe even dying, then yes, I am held liable. I'm held liable for doing that. Period. End of story. Cool. So if you want to, I guess, scream at the top of your lungs whatever attempts to insult me, go ahead. But it's pretty beta behavior if you ask me. So the government releasing the address of Kilmar Abrego Garcia's family, their home address, this is my speculation. Speculation is not a fact, okay? I speculate that the fact is that the Department of Homeland Security released these documents which contained the address of his family, their home address. And so now so many people know what their home address is. I'm not going to share it here. It's in this document. It's so small you can't even see it in here. Point is, my speculation, which isn't fact, my speculation is that the government didn't do this intentionally, but it is quite reckless to do that. It's quite reckless to do that. Think if this was under a Democratic administration, this was under a Democratic administration and there was some big thing happening where then the person at the center of whatever conversation about due process, then the Department of Homeland Security under this hypothetical Democratic administration releases this, I would come to the same conclusion. I'm I don't think that they intended to do that. But also it's very reckless to do that. It shows if you're okay, well, I don't think it was in their intention. Right. But I'll go back to the example I gave earlier. If you accidentally are being reckless in the kitchen and you knock off this beautiful glass vase that was just handmade in West Virginia in the Blanco caves, or if you know all about Blanco, they're a custom glass thing. My mom loves Blanco. I get her Blanco stuff all the time. They're just beautifully like hand-blown glass stuff. Anyway, if you knock off this beautiful glass vase and you're being reckless and it shatters into a million pieces and you say, oh, I didn't mean to do that. Right. You didn't mean to do it, but you're also responsible for cleaning it up. Just because you didn't intend to do harm doesn't mean you're not responsible for it. Just because you accidentally said or did something to hurt someone doesn't mean that you can say, well, it wasn't my intention. You can't hold it against me. No, you have to atone for your bad behavior. You have to apologize for your bad behavior. So even though I don't think, again, it's my speculation, I don't think that this was intentional by the government, it doesn't mean that it wasn't reckless, or it doesn't mean that they don't have to atone for it. That being said, it is entirely possible that it was done on purpose. Or it was just like an added thing. I mean, they went so far. The government is literally going so far to post about how this guy is a bad person in their view. The government is hyper-targeting people. And instead of providing evidence to show why they are, I guess, a bad person, they're not doing that. And instead, they're putting out information to their cult followers that then lead them to being hyper-targeted. Like, so my speculation is only speculation, but it's entirely possible that it's actually the opposite, that they intended to do this. We don't know yet. That being said, it's incredibly reckless posting the address of the family like that. I mean, what about the kids? You know how they say protect the children, protect the children? What about family values? Oh no, it doesn't matter if it's a family of someone who is undocumented but has legal protections to be here given to him by a court. And it doesn't matter if the Supreme Court, the super conservative Supreme Court, even ruled that they should facilitate and effectuate his return. Point of clarity, the Supreme Court, I don't think said effectuate, but said facilitate his return. The district court said to effectuate. Consistency. So I wanted to start out with that story. And what's really, really interesting is I cover some polls on here. Actually, no, before I move on, I want to get to some comments here by some folks. So you just doxed a family from an official account of the United States government. You monumental effing idiots. I mean, it's literally what they did. I've represented many victims of domestic violence in similar civil protection cases. These are not criminal proceedings. The legal standard is lower. The evidence is different. There is no criminal penalty. Stop playing games and trying to mislead people. Bring this man home and his wife and his kids. You just posted this family's private information on a public platform. This is incredibly reckless. You could have redacted their address. That would have been the responsible thing to do if they wanted to actually put this up there. Redact it. But, and here's my speculation. You're asking them to be competent. This administration is so incompetent. I mean, just take the example of tariffs under Donald Trump. Let me give you an example of how Donald Trump does government, okay? And let me get out the hands for this, because this is funny, okay? He's like, they just replace the idea of tariffs with just a house, okay? Donald Trump's like, I love the house. The house is great. The house is fantastic. It has a lot of rooms. It has a lot of rooms that are beautiful. And then, it's just fantastic. And then like a day later, he says, I've been thinking and I just want to burn the house down. I want to burn the house down, burn it to the ground. Char, char, burn, baby, burn. And then all of a sudden the next day he says, actually, I've decided I'm going to save the house. I'm going to maybe repaint some of the rooms. Get me that chartreuse color. Maybe a little bit of a burnt umber. Yeah, no, fantastic. And then he says, actually, no, I've decided to preserve the house for the way that it is. And, because that's the way it always needs to be. And then he accidentally sets the house on fire. Oh, I'm sorry, I set the house on fire. Calls the fire department. The fire department puts out the house. And he goes, look, I saved the house. I saved the house, y'all. I'm a great American patriot. I saved the house. It needed to be saved. But, if it burned down to the ground, that wouldn't be so bad. That is literally how Donald Trump runs America. So connecting back to what we were talking about here, do I think that it is, do I think that this was purposely done? Possibly, possibly not. But also, like, the idea, they could have redacted the address before posting it, but they didn't. And that, in my view, that's because they're literally incompetent. They're just reckless. They have no idea how to actually do stuff. Anyway, someone said, I've represented many victims of domestic violence. Stop playing games and trying to mislead people. And that's really what that's what the Department of Homeland Security is trying to do. Instead of actually providing evidence to show that he was a part of MS-13, because there is none, because he's not a part of it. See, here's the thing. The government says, oh, we have all this evidence to show that he's a dangerous person. Okay, great. Pics or it didn't happen. Pics or it didn't happen. You can't just lob an accusation and use that as evidence. I've said this several times in my live streams. If you accuse someone of doing something, you have to bring the receipts to prove it. If you are in a group chat with someone and you say that this thing happened, and then people say, okay, where's your evidence? And you just repeat again the same thing. It's like, okay, you made a claim, back it up with some evidence. It's not, that should not be an impossible standard. And then you say, oh, just trust me, bro. Trust me, bro. Trust me, bro. Sweetheart, that's not going to get you far. You can't just say, trust me, bro, and constantly scream about it. That's not how that works. So if you do have evidence of this guy being dangerous, then please, great, share it. You haven't done so in a court of law. Literally, and you admit that deporting him, kidnapping, and removing him was an administrative error. The Solicitor General of the United States, at the request of Donald Trump, petitioned the Supreme Court talking about how this was an administrative error. Those were his words in page 3 of his filing. So, like, anyway, but you see what I'm saying about how this is all, like, incredibly reckless. They're trying to shift the narrative instead of actually just, like, doing the right thing for this person and their due process rights. It's disgusting. Going to some other comments here that I wanted to share. So instead of posting his affiliations with MS-13, this administration decided to post a court filing that shows that he wasn't convicted of, to show the reason why then he was deported. Exactly. It's like, how do the police reports for Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, and RFK make sense? Now do the police reports for Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, and RFK make sense? And also, if you're saying that people who have been accused of domestic violence should be criminalized in the sense of not even having their day in court and just deported, kidnapped, sent to a concentration camp, prison, gulag over in another country, then great. Let's start now with Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, every single person that has been accused there. Accusations are not evidence. When you have someone coming forward saying that they were a victim of SA, sexual assault, or if they were a victim of domestic violence, it's important to listen and hear out those allegations. Though you can't just rely on the word of someone alone. That's why you have a trial. That's why you have evidence. That's why you bring in witnesses. That's why you can't just say an accusation is evidence. If I were to accuse some random person in the chat here of doing something, and you say, okay, innocent until proven guilty. Well, wait, no. You've literally decided to go against that whole concept for Kilmar Abrego Garcia. You've decided to go against the whole idea of due process in the Constitution. What makes you think that I should be giving it to you? This is where Martin Luther King Jr. said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. You take away the rights of one person to due process, it affects everyone. It affects you, far-right MAGA people in here constantly trying to name call me, even though I know I look cute. It affects you. If you are eroding the due process rights of someone that you don't like, eventually don't start crying when then the due process rights for you are violated. Don't be like, oh my God, I never thought it would get to me. Yeah, bro. When you vote for the leopards eating faces party, eventually the leopards are going to come pounce on you and try to eat your face. You can't complain about it. When you constantly rally to get the to get the circus to come to town, don't complain when it knocks on your door and starts making a ruckus. Going further here, were charges filed? Are you planning on sending anyone involved in domestic abuse or a domestic incident to a foreign supermax prison without the benefit of a trial? Do you plan to produce actual evidence he's a member of MS-13? Now do PNEG said. He's like, this is not what I voted for. Well, if you voted for Trump, that's exactly what you voted for. Maybe not consciously. And I mean, I'm not going to get into all the specific details around it, but like, the idea is, you know, it doesn't matter if he was a good person or not. We don't want the government to be able to disappear people without due process, nor do we want the Trump administration to ignore Supreme Court decisions. So, and there's a comment here that was really, really interesting. This person, who's obviously a MAGA person, said, so if we bring him back, give him due process, and then we deport him again, will that make Democrats happy? And I was like, yes. Yes. Because everyone should receive their day in court. Everyone should have due process. Doesn't matter who you are. And when you actually go and look at the 14th Amendments, they say that not just citizens, but everyone on American soil, everyone within the jurisdiction of the state shall have the right, shall have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, due process, to then be protected. Let me actually show you all really, really quickly. The Fifth Amendment says that no person, not citizen, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process. Period. End of story. It doesn't just outline that these are rights for citizens. They're rights for everyone. Now, if you have the day in court for an undocumented person, they are alleged to have done they have been alleged to be dangerous in some way, then great. They had their day in court. They had their due process. Then you deport them. Okay. That's how the system works. You give people a chance to prove their innocence before you just assume that they're guilty, before you just assume that they are dangerous, before you assume all of those things. Now, here's what MAGA thinks. You said, oh, well, you're in the country illegally. You've already done a crime. You're already guilty. Do you have no empathy understanding why so many people are coming to this country? Do you understand why there are people fleeing their countries trying to come here? Do you think that they want to be illegal? Do you think that they want to be undocumented? Do you think that they are somehow excited at the prospect of being constantly demonized? Have you asked yourself, have you gone beyond the step of like, oh, all these people are undocumented, why are they here? Have you asked why? Have you talked with them? Have you listened to their stories? I know several people who are that way. They're fleeing violence in their home countries. They're fleeing persecution, religious or not. They're fleeing. I know several people, I'm very gay. I know several people who were fleeing from their countries because they were not very friendly for LGBTQ folks. I know folks that were fleeing because they wanted economic opportunity. Now, does it make it right, but it puts it in context? Think about what you would do for your family. Would you decide if America started really just plummets, everything just starts with crime, it's widespread everywhere, there's nonstop violence, there's an economic disaster plummeting, environmental degradation, and you decide to flee to Canada in order to provide for your family, but then you get in there and people are screaming at the top of their lungs that you are undocumented, yet you tried to go through all the proper channels to then become a citizen. It would take up to 10 years, but you don't have that kind of time because you need to provide for your family now. Don't you think it would be kind of gaslighting for people to just demonize those folks? Have you asked yourself why people try to come in here as undocumented? See, and that's the thing. They don't care about putting themselves in other people's shoes because a lot of people on the right don't have that empathy. Yet they then call themselves Christians and say they follow the word of God? Yeah, I don't think so. I'm saying that as someone who grew up in a very Christian family. So, yeah, those conservative evangelicals, y'all are the biggest hypocrites of all, and Jesus is shaking his head at you. That all being said, it's important to note that this Fifth Amendment applies to everyone. Everyone. The Constitution wasn't just written specifically for citizens, but it was also written for people that would then eventually come to this country. It says that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Now, that's also, you say, oh, well, what about the other amendments? Now, it also says all persons, and it then gives some rights to citizens, but then it says, nor shall any state deprive any person. Any person. They don't say citizen here. They talked about citizens here, but they also just said, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. So if you have a bone to pick with due process, go and take it up with the founders. Go and take it up with the founders. Now, if you think the Constitution should be changed, that's fine, but you can't deny that this is what it says. Cool. Got it. Period. End of story. Also, quick little thing, if you're enjoying the live stream, please make sure to like the stream. It really does help. I work really, really hard to provide this information. I'm going to pivot here to talk about a case that we have an update about the case of Jose Hermosillo. I've been really, really excessively leaning into that story, and we have a huge new development in that case. So you definitely want to continue to be a part of this. I also do have membership tiers if you want to support me doing what I do here. I'm an up-and-coming journalist. Think of me as kind of like a smaller version of Brian Tyler Cohen or like a Mehdi Hassan. I just try to do what I can to inform people. And I appreciate every single one of you. Shout out to my amazing moderators in here who are doing such amazing work maintaining this space. Again, you're only muted and blocked if you spew misinformation, disinformation that goes against YouTube's content policies around spreading misinformation, but also if you spew hate, harassment, bigotry, racism, sexism, homophobia. Yes, by the First Amendment, you have that freedom, but you're not free from the consequences of being muted or blocked or prohibited from a space to maintain the integrity and safety for all people. Cool? Got it? Awesome. Let's transition to another story here. And this is a really, really interesting development in the case of Jose Hermosillo. So I've been talking about this case. Actually, let me get a sip of coffee. Hold on. Whew. Talking is hard work. All right. I've been talking a lot about this case of Jose Hermosillo. And this is a guy who's a U.S. citizen who was detained for about 9 to 10 days by U.S. Customs and Border Patrol in a correctional facility. And this is a U.S. citizen, 19-year-old, who lives in New Mexico, was visiting family, visiting family out in Tucson, Arizona. Now, the reason why this case is so interesting is because of a couple different details. Number one, that the Department of Homeland Security and the courts are giving 2 different renditions of the story, which shows that they don't even have consistency in whatever way that they're trying to cover up for the actual truth, which we now have, which is really interesting. And number 2, this shows that the intent is the racial profiling. The intent is the criminalization of identities. It's also the intent of the criminalization of people with disabilities. So we're going to be talking about that as well. So I want to highlight the case. Many people know about Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Several people know about Juan Carlos Lopez Gomez. Some people know about the other ones of Bachir Atala and Genzi Machado. These are people I've talked about. But I want to dive into this here. So let me just get right into it. This was a piece in Mother Jones. U.S. citizen wrongly detained by the Border Patrol says the government's account is false. And there's evidence to show that it is false. Let me just give a quick little summary of of the whole thing. So this guy, his name is Jose Hermosillo. He is a U.S. citizen, and he was He's from Albuquerque, New Mexico. So as you can see right here, Albuquerque, New Mexico. And he was visiting family. Sorry, my green screen's kind of wonky. He was visiting family over in Tucson, Arizona. So the reason why I'm showing the map here is because going from Albuquerque to Tucson, you go down this highway and then get on another one at La Cruces and go over the New Mexico-Arizona border and then over to Tucson. Now, he's visiting his girlfriend's family out in Tucson, Arizona. So this route becomes really, really important here. Now, you'll notice how I wrote there's 70 miles between Tucson and this place called Nogales. Nogales, this is a really important aspect of the story. Now, before I continue here, Hermosillo, who lives in Albuquerque, was detained near Nogales, according to what court documents allege. They allege that he entered the country from Mexico and was found, quote, without the proper immigration documents. According to the court documents, again, these were all what was alleged, Hermosillo, quote, admitted to illegally entering the United States of America from Mexico on or about April 7th of 2025. Now you'll say, wait a minute, why would someone allege and admit in court documents, admit that they are from somewhere when there's evidence showing that he's from New Mexico? That's a good question. And I was asking myself a lot, like, what, hold on. So it's important to note, the government documents are saying that he was found and detained near Nogales, Arizona. Nogales is down here. Nogales is on the border of Mexico and Arizona. There is a section of Nogales that is in Mexico, section that is in Arizona. Now, what's also really interesting is Tucson is 70 miles north of Nogales. And when you go and listen to the statements by people at Homeland Security, they're saying a completely different story. They're saying a completely different story. This is Tricia McLaughlin, who is a spokesperson for DHS, Department of Homeland Security. And she says, on April 8th, Hermosillo approached Border Patrol in Tucson and stated that he had entered the U.S. illegally through Nogales. Did you catch the difference there? The difference is that Tricia at Department of Homeland Security is saying that Hermosillo approached Border Patrol in Tucson, Arizona. Court documents, which I'll show you here in a second, are saying that he was found at or near Nogales, 70 miles away. So the government can't even get their story straight around this whole thing. Now, if you're like, okay, well, what court documents are you talking about? What court documents are you talking about? Right here, United States District Court versus Jose Hermosillo. It says in here that he's a citizen of Mexico on April 8th, which is not true. By the way, I'll show you in a second. On April 8th, agents found Jose Hermosillo in the United States at or near Nogales without the proper immigration documents. So they're literally going through. The courts are saying one story. Department of Homeland Security is saying another story. So they're requesting for him to be detained, even though they don't even have a clear reason on what the events of what went down. So he was detained for like 10 days, 9 to 10 days. And we now know what the real reason for his detainment. Please make sure to like the stream. I'll tell you a little bit more here in a second. But what's really interesting is the court documents were saying that he was found at or near Nogales. If you were traveling from Albuquerque, New Mexico to go and visit your girlfriend's family in Tucson, Arizona, you're not going to go all the way down here, then go like around here. No, you're going to go down this highway, over that highway. So for them to say that he was found at or near Nogales is really strange. And so what it shows is that government can't keep their story straight when trying to detain someone. Which again, He's a U.S. citizen. This is what gets to the next aspect that is just wild. So, he frequently was telling them, hey, I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm a U.S. citizen. You know, I don't have my social security card or birth certificate on me. I'm a U.S. citizen. And what's really interesting is the officer said, yeah, sure you are. Sure you are. Go and tell your attorney. Go and tell your lawyer. Go and tell your attorney. So they literally decided to lock him up because they just suspected him of that. That racial profiling is the point, and it is dangerous. Why does this only happen to Mexican-looking U.S. citizens? Or those who have an accent, but it doesn't happen to white Anglo-Saxon people? Now, more and more details have been coming out about this specific story. And we now know what the actual truth was. And Jose Hermosillo actually revealed what that truth was in this interview that he recently gave. So, in an interview with Popular Information, Hermosillo said that the Department of Homeland Security's account is false. He was constantly trying to tell them, hey, I'm a U.S. citizen, I'm a U.S. citizen. And they said, yeah, I'm sure you are. Go and tell your attorney. According to Hermosillo, he was visiting his girlfriend's family in Tucson from his home in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Several hours before his arrest, Hermosillo was transported to a hospital in Tucson, Arizona, by ambulance after suffering from a seizure. So this guy had a medical emergency and was ill and needed some medical treatment. He has a New Mexico state ID, but he didn't take it with him during the medical emergency. Like, when you're in a situation like that, you're caring about your health. You might not think about that. So, he didn't have any forms of ID that were on him in that sense. After being released from the hospital, this is really interesting. Hermosillo did not know how to return to where he was staying in Tucson. So, he approached the Border Patrol officer. He approached what he deemed were police because he was looking for someone to help him. He said, I saw a car. I asked him for help. He told the officer that he was staying in Tucson. So by his rendition, it actually follows what the Department of Homeland Security is saying. They're like, yeah, he approached Border Patrol in Tucson. That's his rendition. That's what Department of Homeland Security is saying. Again, that goes against the court documents that were literally created in order to detain him. So it shows that the government is literally crafting a narrative in order to detain someone. Anyway, going forward here, according to Hermosillo's girlfriend, Grace Hernandez, Hermosillo has learning disabilities, and he can only write his name. Hermosillo said he did not graduate from high school and dropped out after the 10th grade. Wait, hold on. Actually, I skipped ahead really quickly. I skipped ahead. When he approached the officer in Tucson, Arizona, when he approached the Border Patrol person, the officer was like, oh, you're not from here. Do you have papers? So the Border Patrol person looks at him, sees that he is Hispanic, and they're like, show me your papers. Show me your papers. And he goes, I'm from New Mexico. And the officer goes, sure you are. Yeah, sure you are. Okay. So you're literally assuming something based on someone's race. Yeah, that's not racist at all. When the officer asked where he was from, Hermosillo told the officer that he was from New Mexico. The officer then accused Hermosillo of lying. Don't make me out like I'm stupid, the officer said. I know you're from Mexico. Hermosillo said that he never told the officer he was born in Mexico, was a citizen of Mexico, or entered the country illegally. And he would have not said those things because they're not true. But what's really interesting is the officer was saying, here, sign all these documents, sign all these documents. But again, this guy, who's a 19-year-old who just suffered a seizure, got out of the hospital, who's lost, trying to figure out a way back to his girlfriend's family's place in Tucson, Arizona, a state he doesn't live in. He lives in New Mexico. And he goes and asks a police officer for help. That police officer, instead of giving him the time of day, just accuses him without any evidence to show that he is illegal of being undocumented, even though he isn't. And they then go and decide to just detain him, handcuff him, send him to a correctional facility. And what's really, really interesting is that this guy, he has a learning disability. He dropped out of school because he was always in different special education classes. He just needed a little extra TLC, tender love and care. And the officer says, here, sign all of these papers, sign all these transcripts. But Hermosillo did not read it because he can't read. I mean, when you're asking someone who maybe has a disability or is not able to do things, and then you lock them up because they're not able to accomplish that task, that's just cruel. That's just cruel. So it adds a really interesting, different element here. According to Hermosillo's girlfriend, Grace Hernandez, Hermosillo has a learning disability, can only write his name. Hermosillo did not graduate from high school and dropped out after the 10th grade. So the officer signed the document. The officer also signed the document, which said Hermosillo read the document or had it read to him. But Hermosillo said no one read it to him. So, quick little correction. I was incorrect yesterday, and I think the day before as well, when I thought that this was a fake signature. I actually said on my live stream, I don't know for sure, but this doesn't look real to me. Well, we now know that it is indeed real. Cool. Don't ever say that I don't admit when I am incorrect about something, because I care more about the truth than stubbornness about being right, okay? Period. So this ends up actually being a valid signature. It looks a little bit wonky, but that's because also he has a learning disability. He isn't super literate. Also, I believe that his first language is Spanish, so it might not necessarily be that he doesn't know how to read or write a lot, but he's not very literate in English. So, in a phone interview Tuesday, Hermosillo's parents told CBS News that their son suffers from intellectual disabilities. He cannot read or write and has trouble speaking. He's never been able to read and has always been in special education classes in school, Guadalupe Hermosillo, his mother, said in Spanish. So, it's the criminalization also that there's another element to this story of the criminalization of someone having a disability. And that really just messes me up, because the police got him, basically coerced him into signing these documents, not reading it to him, where he alleges that he is from Mexico, entered illegally, all of these things. But you're asking someone who doesn't have the ability to truly understand what's happening. This is a guy who has an intellectual learning disability, doesn't know how to read and write very well. He dropped out of high school, and he's a U.S. citizen, and you're basically cornering him and pressuring him to signing a document saying that he, under oath, says that he is all of these things. So what this shows is that Homeland Security and Border Patrol are literally just looking for any sort of valid or any sort of way to get people to create and forge government documents in order to provide a case for deportation, even though he's a U.S. citizen. So eventually, his girlfriend's aunt, who I think her name is Grace Lavra, I believe, was actually like, oh crap, wait, hold on, wait. He was detained by, where is it? Hold on. He was detained by ICE, Customs and Border Patrol. We need to get him out of there. We need to get him out of there because, he's not, she said, quote, I think that they would have kept him. So eventually they produced documentation, birth certificate, social security card, showing that, nope, he is indeed a citizen. He is indeed a citizen. Where was it? Oh, I have so many graphics here. Here it is. As Hermosillo began to lose hope, his family got to work. His girlfriend's aunt provided officials with Hermosillo's birth certificate and social security card. Finally, after 10 long days, filled with uncertainty and despair, Hermosillo was released. And they finally were like able to produce his birth certificate, social security card, ended up being released. But what does this show? What are some of our conclusions here? It shows that this U.S. citizen went to go and ask for help from their law enforcement. As a U.S. citizen, go and ask for help. Then they are criminally and racially profiled into being a dangerous, undocumented criminal and locked up without any evidence based on accusation. And because he has a learning and intellectual disability, doesn't read and write very well, he was coerced into basically signing a document saying all of these things that were not true. And then he gets locked up for it. This is the criminalization of people with disabilities. This is the criminalization of people with different identities. That's literally what this is. Let me just think about if I were an officer. If I were an officer and I go through and I see that this guy is obviously like lost, confused, doesn't know where he's going, looks like he just came out of a medical procedure, I might be like, are you a citizen or anything like that? But like also at the same time, you want to help that person. They're obviously needing something. They need help. They're asking for law enforcement for help. If I were in that situation, I would probably go and look up in the database this guy. I said, oh, you don't have any ID? That's okay. We'll go and look it up in our system. Doesn't the government have the capacity to go through and get any information? If they even don't have an ID, they don't have all of that stuff. They go through, if he verifies, he says, I'm a U.S. citizen, go and check by the name. Do what you can to verify that they are a U.S. citizen. Not everyone's going to carry their birth certificate or their social security card on them. But also, again, ask yourself, would you, if it was me, and I come up, I'm lost, I just suffered a seizure, all of that, and I need help getting back to where I was in Tucson, Arizona, do you think they would flag me as being undocumented? I'm a white guy. Do you think that they would suspect me of it? No. So you're giving two different people different treatments. And you're expecting me to think that there's equality and equity in this country? You're literally, and this is what the woke left talks about when they're saying that there are abuses within the criminal justice system, that there is racial profiling, that there is criminalization of poverty, that there is criminalization of people with different identities that talk, walk, and express themselves differently. This is a peak case of absolute racism. They're assuming because of X, Y, and Z. They don't just help him. And see, also, you have to have a reason. You have to have a reason to believe that someone is undocumented. You can't just look at them and be like, oh, you must be undocumented. That's criminal profiling. That's racial profiling. Like, can't you and I agree that that's just wrong? That's just wrong. The Fourth Amendment protects people from unwarranted searches and seizures. So if this guy just needed help from law enforcement trying to figure out how to get back to his family's place, because he just was discharged from the hospital, he's trying to figure out where to go. The government doesn't have any reason to then suspect that he's an undocumented person. And also, is that the hardened criminal that you want to go after? So the right always talks about how they're going to go after dangerous criminals. This is a 19-year-old kid. Is he a criminal? The amount of injustice in this case really astonishes me, and how the cruelty is the point is what really just gnaws at me. It just gnaws at me. because it shows that there's such this criminalization of people with different identities. And it's just messed up. It's absolutely messed up. And my heart goes out. He's now thankfully been released. But there's another conclusion of this, is how the government can't even get their story straight. The government is saying that, DHS is saying that he approached Border Patrol in Tucson. Well, that's actually the correct rendition. But why is it that then the court documents are saying that he was found at or near Nogales? What this shows is that the government is doing what they can to craft. They're literally making up information, details, accusations in court documents in order to then have a certain outcome. They're not doing justice for the people. They're doing justice for whoever is above them, creating these orders to be cruel to American citizens based on their race, based on their ability. That's, when you look at this, that is the conclusion. It's just sick to me. When Democrats in the state of New York, in New York City, were doing excessive amounts of stop and frisk, guess what? A lot of people condemned them for that, because you're like, yeah, you're criminally profiling people. That's not great. That's not great. You have to give a reason why you want to stop someone. You can't just base it on race. Here is a case of them basing criminalization or being a dangerous person based on their race. Where are those people that criticize the Democrats for that? Peep. Nothing. Why? Because they decide to pick and choose when their ideology matters or not, based on convenience. And it's sad, because I thought we all wanted to live in a world where we actually had equality and equity and had a baseline set of beliefs. Not just whatever opportunism you can for whatever political figure you tend to favor. So, anyway, I wanted to just talk about that because this case really just kind of messes me up. It makes me feel so sad that there are people being treated this way. And you might say, well, Scott, why do you care? Why do you care? You're not Hispanic. It doesn't matter if it affects me or not. If I see injustice, I'm going to talk about it. Just because it doesn't affect me doesn't mean I'm not supposed to care. Why is it that there are people out here who don't have any empathy whatsoever? That's my question. Some people say, oh, so you want to die on the hill of due process? You want to die on the hill of innocent until proven guilty? Yes, because that's what our country was founded on. That is the patriotic thing to do. The patriotic thing to do is to give people the chance to clear their name and also to stand against the disproportionate targeting of people based on their identities. Just because something doesn't affect me directly doesn't mean I'm not supposed to care. I was raised in a family where under Christianity, where I believed that they were actually talking about trying to care and love everyone. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Seek to be last, not first. Yet, it seems like the living embodiment of right-wing evangelical Christianity is literally the opposite of everything that they teach. So if you're a part of that, then seriously, look inward at yourself and ask if Jesus would do that. Jesus would be deported for being an undocumented person today. He would. Right-wingers wouldn't even notice a savior if he appeared in the flesh. And now, as a point of clarity, I'm not sure where I am with my religious journey, but that besides the point, it's hard for me to want to be a part of something if I know how hypocritical it is. Anyway. So I wanted to talk about that story here because everything happening with Jose Hermosillo just drives me up the wall. It really does. It makes me so sad for the status of what's happening in this country. And it starts with all of us trying to understand and know about it. And this isn't the only U.S. citizen who's been brutalized this way. Juan Carlos Lopez Gomez, Bashir Atala, a Trump voter, is now like, oh my God, wait, I didn't think it would affect me. Yeah, dude. Yeah, dude. Or Genzi Machado, another guy who's a U.S. citizen in Virginia who's just pulled over at the suspect based on his race of being Hispanic for being undocumented. The racial profiling is the point. The criminalization of identity is the point. And guess what? Guess what? This is exactly what they did in the Holocaust. This is exactly what they did in the Holocaust. They decided to smear and criminalize anyone who is Jewish as being dangerous, as being somehow an enemy of the state, so that they then brainwashed those people into thinking that brutality was somehow acceptable. This is the exact same playbook as the Holocaust. It was done gradually then too. It was done gradually then too. Why do people not learn from history? History might not exactly repeat, but it definitely echoes, and we are seeing a massive echo right now. MAGA, are you really willing to stand on your stubbornness and ignore a genocide happening over in Gaza, but then also a genocide happening here in America with Native Americans, but also just like undocumented people who are just trying to come to this country legally? Are you willing to stand by and literally be the living embodiment of everything hypocritical about what you say you tend to believe in regards to Christianity? This is why I talk about empathy a lot. This is why I talk about that a lot, because I don't see it in this country in several people. And I try to do my best to call it out. And I appreciate every single one of you that's here with me. I've not looked at the chat this entire time. I've not looked at the chat the entire time of the live stream. I haven't. So, I'm about to look at it. Jeez Louise, here we go. I appreciate every single one of you. Mods, how are we doing? I love all of you so much. Even if you don't like me. So, we doing okay in the chat here? Now, I'm going to have to go here soon, but I really wanted to talk about Jose Hermosillo's story because, and whether they realized it or not, it's not about me or my credit, but there are people out here who care about these kinds of things. And I haven't even touched into the cases of like Mahmoud Khalil. You know, there is so much injustice happening in this country, and just because it might not affect you personally doesn't mean you shouldn't care. We should all be we are all in one ship together. We're all in one ship together. If just because you might not poke a hole in it doesn't mean you don't care about us staying afloat. And also, I find that people who are constantly fear-mongering about the status of whether someone is a citizen or not, can't we all agree that we have bigger things to worry about than someone's official citizenship status? Why can't we address income inequality? Why can't we raise the minimum wage, bring manufacturing back to the US? Why can't we focus on other things? There are many people here. Most all the people here that are not here legally don't like the fact that they are undocumented. They don't want to be undocumented. They want to become citizens. Many people who are Hispanic believe in this American dream. They want to be a part of that. They don't like the fact that they're here undocumented, many of them. They just don't. Do you think that they signed up to be constantly ridiculed by a certain portion of the American population? Do you think that they would willingly do that to themselves, put a target on their back? This is why it is so important to understand and put yourself in their shoes, unless you're a coward, unless you don't want to. While we're speaking of empathy here, you all know that video on my channel that's gotten almost 500,000 views with that MAGA trauma counselor person. I'm not going to say her name because I believe in the privacy. She keeps creating content, and it's even more wild. This is someone who has a degree, supposedly, or some sort of certification in nervous system regulation or something like that. And she literally, at one point in one of her videos on TikTok, said that we need to stop trying to put ourselves in the shoes of other people. And I'm going to do a video about that. And we need to stop trying to have empathy. Now, you heard me right. You heard me right. She, at one point, in a couple of these videos, she was talking about how we need to stop having empathy. And I'm like, so, and this is someone who said that she voted for Trump. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Anyway, I love all of you. And by the way, too, everyone in here who maybe has the ability, to understand, you do realize that Democrats also, of course, we want to have like citizenship, we want to have borders and all that stuff. But if we go through and do what we're doing right now, deporting people without due process, the ability to then become citizens, gaslighting them and demonizing them and criminalizing them endlessly, it goes against just human rights, but also constitutional rights and morality. You know, like, the thing is, if they want to rule that, the thing is, we need to bring back Kilmer Abrego Garcia. Then if he has his day in court and it's ruled that he should be deported because of XYZ, okay. He has his day in court. That's important. That due process is important, not just for citizens, but for everyone. This country is a country of immigrants. This country is a country of immigrants. The colonizers were immigrants. The colonizers were immigrants. The people coming through Ellis Island were all immigrants. Now, unless you have Native American heritage, then you're not. But literally, this country was formed by stealing the land of Native Americans for people fleeing as immigrants. Now, of course, that has a really, really, really wild background. I also want to note that I actually talked with my dad yesterday, and I confirmed with him. He told me, he's like, yeah, our side of the family are American colonizers. It's true. Now, does that make me a bad person? No. It just helps me understand. I'll give you some context. So my last name is Johnson, Scott Johnson. I had like a great grandfather or something that fought in the Revolutionary War, and probably unalived Native Americans and stole their land. So it's important to understand that. But he fought in the Revolutionary War, and because he fought in the war, he was then awarded land out in Ohio. So that's where my dad's side of the family is from. Now, my mom's side of the family were immigrants through Ellis Island. Now, knowing that part of my history, does that make me a bad person? No. No, not at all. It's just important to understand that. It's important to understand that context there. That, yeah, I guess I can admire my great-great-great-grandfather's bravery for fighting against an oppressive government, but I can also strongly condemn the possibility that he displaced Native Americans from like, their land. Now, I don't know that for sure, but there's this idea that, like, criticizing your heritage means that you don't care about it or you can't look at it with context. So, we are all immigrants on this land. We are all immigrants on this land unless you're a native person. And the fact that there's this criminalization of undocumented people, they don't like this fact that they are undocumented. They want to come to this country legally. The system is so backlogged. The system is so backlogged because it's underfunded, it's undersupported. They literally have no soul, no empathy. Yeah, really. Someone said, "Why are you gay?" Why are you commenting that? You know, Jesus was illegal. Jesus was not like quote unquote like pure citizen by the Roman Empire. He called himself the King of the Jews, and he was crucified for it. Do you ever actually look at what you're supporting? The Romans under Caesar Augustus and Pontius Pilate decided to crucify Jesus because he called himself the King of the Jews. And they're like, we can't have any other kings in this land. You must go. He was an undocumented person. They didn't decide to just deport him. They decided to kill him. My whole point here is, like, why is there such this demonization of those people? The Bible teaches us to embrace and help be the good Samaritan. The Bible teaches us to love thy neighbor as thyself. Seek to be last, not first. It said, like, in the Bible, it says that it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. So why do people try and warp Christianity for their own purpose? Well, it's because Christianity has always been hijacked by people, especially a part of the far right, to carry out awful acts. Christianity was what was used for the Holocaust, partially. That's why they wanted to go after the Jews. So someone said, please teach what the Bible says about gay people. Have you heard of the whole thing that happened with, I think it was 1942, where they rewrote parts of the Bible because these right-wing people decided to reinterpret it? There was no mention of any sort of idea about homosexuality until it came to 1942. If you actually go and look at the rendition of the story of all of that, then you will actually realize what you're saying. There was no mention of that being somehow bad or awful. But also, that doesn't negate my point. It doesn't negate my point at all about what it says in there. I feel bad for you. Don't feel bad for me. I'm here with all you beautiful people, even if you hate me. So anyway, I have to get going. I have to get to work. I love all of you. Y'all are all awesome. I appreciate every single one of you. Shout out to my amazing moderators. If this was your first time here, then awesome. I'm glad that you're here. Oh my goodness. Anne-Marie Morgan became a member. Oh, that's so cool. Foot Locker. No, I don't work at Foot Locker, although it looks like I work at Foot Locker today. It looks like I work at Foot Locker today. Wow, amazing. Thank you for becoming a member. If you want to support what I do here, breaking down stories like this, I post on my YouTube quite often. I'm a working girl, so it's really, really tough trying to build up a YouTube channel at the same time. I appreciate every single one of you. Wow, someone just said, I hate you. I love you too, friend. I love you too. Hate gives you acne. Hate raises your blood pressure. Don't do it. Don't do it. I disagree with you, but appreciate your tone and vibe. Yes, you can disagree with my opinions or my analysis. You just can't disagree with the objective facts and information. But yeah, I appreciate you saying that. So I appreciate every single one of you, even if you don't like me. Y'all are all awesome because I believe in, spreading that love, peace, and understanding. It's so crazy when people are like, wait, you say that you love people that constantly try to put you down? I say, yeah. Why? Do you expect me to be like, I hate you? No. I don't got time for whatever silly nonsense you want to do. I don't. I don't. Like, there are people who try to elect to me being their, like, enemy, and I'm like, you know when, like, one dog is constantly trying to bark at other people, and they're just like, rah, 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 and the other dog is, like, just not bothered? That's how it is with these trolls and me. Like, okay. So, oh, Lisa, I love you. And I want to give the biggest shout out to my moderators in here. Cherie, Ellie, Akicha, Jenny, Kate, Joanna Tech, Ilisa. Y'all are all incredible. So I appreciate every single one of you. I couldn't do this without y'all. Shout out to all my amazing friends in here. And also shout out to what's her face, Anna Marie Morgan, that just became a member for, there are 3 tiers. There are 3 tiers on the channel, and I'm about to start producing the members only content now that I have a couple people. So that's really, really exciting. There's the fact checker, then there's the press pass, and then there is the editor circle. And so I'm still in the process of building up those platforms. Eventually I want to be able to turn on super chats. That's something I want to figure out today. It means a lot for you all to support me on my channel. Glad I was able to see you live. Oh my goodness, Lisa, are you the Lisa that I'm thinking of? Or is because I know a couple different Lisas personally in my life. Get a green screen, please. I know. See, here's the thing. I do my live streams out of my car because I'm a working girl, so it's not easy. Not easy trying to do this. But see, I'm not gonna let those kinds of things stop me. You know? I don't have like a studio per se. I don't have that. And I mean, if you all want, if I should open up a crowdfunding, maybe I can get some funding to have my own studio. That would be great, you know, but I got to make do with what I got. No, sweetie, sorry, lots of Lisas. Okay, I just know a couple different Lisas personally in my life, and I'm like, wait, is it one of them? I'm happy that you're a part of my new Lisa squad. So anyway, I love all of you so much. You all are incredible. Just remember that you are beautiful, you are loved, you are valid, you are strong, and you are fierce. Don't let anyone or anything ever dim your shine. And make sure to subscribe and become a member if you want to support the channel. Oh, Cat Mommy, Ginger Monster, love you all so much. And all the people in here, I appreciate every single one of you. Y'all are awesome. So, amen. You are the Pudding Stealer. I love that name. I love that name. Cat Mommy, Shingo, Thomas Nolan, thank you. I love you all so much. Bye.